The key to a perfect corporate takeover isn't just about having the right paperwork. It's about knowing what your opponent doesn't know. And my stepbrother had no idea what was coming. I'm Samantha Chun, though most people at Chun Technologies just know me as Sam from IT. My father, Richard Chun, built the company from nothing into a $2.5 billion technology empire. But when he married Elizabeth Harrison 5 years ago, everything changed. Elizabeth came with baggage, specifically her son Marcus, a 35-year-old entrepreneur whose only successful business venture was convincing wealthy women to invest in his failed startups. From the moment they moved in, Marcus made it clear he saw Chun Technologies as his ticket to the big time. Finally, a real company to run, he'd said during their first dinner with us, ignoring how I'd been working there since college, starting in the IT department and working my way up to Chief Technology Officer. Though I kept that title quiet, still using my old IT department email and office. Dad saw through Marcus immediately. A company isn't a toy, he'd told me privately. It needs someone who understands both the technology and the people. But Elizabeth was constantly pushing for Marcus to take on more responsibility. He just needs a chance to prove himself, she'd insist. Look how well he handles himself at corporate events. What she meant was that Marcus was good at schmoozing, at telling people what they wanted to hear. He'd never written a line of code or developed a product, but he could talk about synergy and market disruption with the best of them. Dad kept him at arm's length from any real power, giving him a VP title but no actual authority. This infuriated Marcus, who'd expected to walk straight into a C-suite position. Your father doesn't understand modern business, he'd complain to anyone who would listen. He's stuck in the past with all this learning the business from the ground up nonsense. What Marcus didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that Dad had been preparing me to take over for years. Every decision, every project, every challenge was a lesson in leadership. While Marcus was attending charity galas and golf tournaments, I was learning every aspect of the company. Then Dad got sick. Pancreatic cancer, aggressive and fast-moving. In his final months, he called me to his home office. Sammy, he said, using his old nickname for me. Marcus is going to make a play for the company when I'm gone. I know, I replied. Elizabeth's been helping him meet with board members. Dad smiled. Yes, but they've forgotten something important about Chun Technologies' corporate structure. Something that's been in place since before you were born. He showed me documents I'd never seen before, explaining his long-term plan. By the time I left his office, I understood exactly what needed to be done. Dad passed away 3 weeks later. At the funeral, Marcus managed to look appropriately sad while quietly telling board members about his vision for the company's future. Elizabeth was more direct. Richard and I discussed Marcus taking over, she told anyone who would listen. He wanted the company to have strong male leadership. I kept quiet, continuing my work in IT, watching as Marcus grew more confident. He even tried to have me fired, claiming my position was redundant, but was told that all personnel changes would have to wait until after the emergency board meeting. That meeting was scheduled for today. Marcus spent weeks preparing, meeting with board members, making promises about increased dividends and aggressive expansion. He thought he had everything lined up perfectly. The boardroom was packed. All 12 board members were present, along with key shareholders and executives. I sat quietly in the back, ostensibly there to handle the video conference setup. Marcus stood at the head of the table, radiating confidence in his $5,000 suit. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. As you know, my father Richard Chen's tragic passing has left a leadership void in this company. However, he and I discussed his succession plans extensively. He wanted Chun Technologies to move in a bold new direction, and he chose me to lead that transformation. Elizabeth, sitting in the front row, nodded approvingly. Several board members looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. I have here, Marcus continued, holding up a document, Dad's letter expressing his wish for me to take over as CEO. Additionally, through my mother's inheritance of his shares, we now control 30% of the company. The board's vote today is really just a formality. He smiled magnanimously. Of course, there will be changes. The old guard, he glanced dismissively at several longtime executives, will need to make way for fresh perspectives. And certain, redundant positions will be eliminated. That's when I stood up. Before we proceed with the vote, there's something the board needs to see. Marcus barely glanced at me. The IT staff can be excused now. We don't need technical support anymore. Actually, I said, connecting my laptop to the main screen. You do. You see, Dad left a video will. He was very specific about when it should be played. What? No, all of Dad's wishes were written down. We don't need to dash. I pressed play. Dad's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and Marcus Harrison is trying to take control of my company. Dad's voice was firm. What he doesn't know, what his mother doesn't know, is that Chun Technologies has a unique corporate structure, established when I founded it. Marcus's confident smile began to fade. First, Dad continued, Elizabeth's inheritance of my personal shares means nothing. Those shares, as clearly stated in their documentation, can only be voted by a blood relative or someone who has worked at the company for at least 10 years. Elizabeth's face went pale. Marcus started to speak, but Dad wasn't finished. Second, the CEO position at Chun Technologies can only be held by someone who has worked their way up through the company, understanding our technology and our people from the ground up. This requirement is written into our corporate charter and can only be changed by a unanimous board vote plus approval from our technical advisory board. The board members were sitting up straighter now, several of them pulling out copies of the charter, nodding as they found the relevant sections. Finally, Dad said, I'm proud to announce that my successor has already been chosen, someone who has worked at every level of this company, who understands our technology, our people, and our vision. Someone who has been preparing for this role for years while keeping their identity private to ensure they were treated normally by employees and executives alike. I stood up again. My name is Samantha Chun. Most of you know me as Sam from IT. What you don't know is that I'm also the Chief Technology Officer and the largest individual shareholder of Chun Technologies. The room erupted in chaos. Marcus jumped to his feet, his face red with rage. This is ridiculous. You can't just dash. Actually, she can, said Howard Bennett, our longest-serving board member. I remember when Richard put these provisions in place. He wanted to ensure the company would always be led by someone who understood it from the ground up. I clicked to the next slide, showing my employment history, patents, and shareholding documentation. I started in the IT department help desk during college. I've worked in development, project management, and operations. For the past 3 years, I've been CTO, though only a few people knew that. But you're just IT support. Marcus sputtered. No, I corrected him. I'm the person who actually knows how this company works. Would anyone like to see the organizational changes I'm proposing? The next hour was a blur of presentations, questions, and discussions. My plans for the company's future were detailed, technical, and clearly well thought out. The board members who had been wary of Marcus's vague promises about disruption were visibly relieved to see actual strategy documents. Elizabeth tried to object, claiming she should have some say as Dad's widow. That's when Howard played his trump card. Actually, Mrs. Chun, your prenuptial agreement specifically excluded you from any involvement in company operations. And since you haven't worked here for 10 years, you can't vote those shares you inherited. This is gender discrimination. Marcus shouted, desperately trying to save his plan. You can't exclude my mother just because she's a woman. Interesting argument, I noted. Coming from someone who's trying to replace a female CTO with himself despite having no technical experience. Should we review your resume? All those failed startups and investor lawsuits. Marcus slumped in his chair, defeated. Elizabeth was quietly crying, her dreams of controlling $1 billion company evaporating. The board voted unanimously to confirm me as CEO. As Marcus and Elizabeth slunk out of the boardroom, Howard approached me with a smile. Richard would be proud, he said. He always said the best leader is one who understands every level of the business. The next few weeks were interesting. Marcus and Elizabeth moved out of Dad's house, which I had inherited, and into a condo. Elizabeth's shares were placed in a voting trust controlled by the board, since she couldn't vote them herself. Marcus tried to claim he had been promised an executive position, but his complete lack of relevant experience made that impossible. The company's stock price jumped 20% when my appointment was announced. The tech industry loved the story of the undercover CEO who had worked her way up from the help desk. Trade magazines wrote articles about Chun Technologies' unique corporate structure and succession planning. I kept my old IT office, though I also used the CEO's suite when needed. It helped me stay connected to the real work of the company, not just the executive level. Marcus made one last attempt at revenge, trying to leak damaging information about me to the press. Unfortunately for him, The only story he had was how I had deceived everyone by working in IT while being CTO. The resulting headlines, CEO previously did real work, weren't quite what he'd hoped for. Elizabeth eventually apologized, admitting that she and Marcus had completely misunderstood Dad's vision for the company. He tried to tell us, she said, that Chin Technologies wasn't about fancy titles or corner offices. It was about understanding the technology and the people who create it. We just didn't want to hear it. I accepted her apology, but maintained professional distance. The trust Dad had built into the company's structure had protected it from exactly this kind of takeover attempt, and I intended to honor that vision. A year has passed since that board meeting. Chin Technologies is thriving, with new products and innovations that build on our technical strengths. I still work directly with development teams sometimes, and I still keep my IT badge as a reminder of where I started. Marcus has moved to Florida, where he's apparently trying to start another company. Elizabeth sends Christmas cards but otherwise keeps her distance, perhaps finally understanding that corporate leadership isn't about who you marry or what you wear to charity galas. The video has become part of our corporate training, teaching new employees that at Chin Technologies, understanding the work is more important than having the right connections. We've even formalized the practice of executives spending time working at different levels of the company, though none of them have gone quite as far as I did. Dad's corporate structure requirements are now studied in business schools as an example of innovative succession planning. Other technology companies have started implementing similar requirements, ensuring their future leaders actually understand their core business. The boardroom where Marcus made his failed power play has been renovated, but we kept one thing: the screen where Dad's video played. It serves as a reminder that true leadership isn't inherited or seized. It's earned through understanding, experience, and respect for the work itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Marcus's old business school about corporate governance and succession planning. I accepted, planning to use our story as a case study in why understanding a business from the ground up matters more than knowing the right people or making the right promises. The lesson isn't just about corporate structure or succession planning. It's about respect for the work itself. Dad built those requirements into the company because he understood that technology companies need leaders who understand technology, not just business jargon. Howard, who still serves on our board, sometimes jokes about Marcus's face when the video started playing. He thought he had everything figured out, he chuckles. He never even bothered to read the corporate charter. That's the real moral of the story. Success in business, like success in life, comes from doing the work, understanding the details, and respecting the foundation others have built. No amount of fancy suits or smooth talking can replace actual knowledge and experience. Chin Technologies continues to grow and innovate, led by people who understand both the technology and the business. Marcus's attempt to take over is now just a cautionary tale we tell new executives about why they need to understand every level of the company. And me? I still have my IT badge, still spend time with development teams, and still believe that the best leaders are the ones who understand the work from the ground up. After all, that's what Dad taught me, and he built that lesson right into the foundation of his company. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about proving why the right way was right all along.